My name is Elena Harlow, and today I will be talking about Mackinac Island. I'm sure that if you weren't from Michigan, the first thing you might think of is the Great Lakes when you think of Michigan. Or you might think of the automobile industry and Henry Ford and the Henry Ford Museum. Or you might even think of the world's largest Christmas store, Bronner's, and Frankenmuth. Well, this state has so much to offer. Today, like I stated, I want to talk about Mackinac Island. Mackinac Island is located on Lake Huron. It is right in between the upper and lower peninsula of Michigan, and it is right near the Mackinac Bridge, about 6 miles to be exact. It is on the North American plate. It is right smack dab in the middle of the plate. The plate moves about, I think, 2 centimeters per year, but there's not a lot of movement or like earthquakes near Mackinac Island since it's right in the middle. This island started forming around 1300 BC due to the Ice Age and the last Ice Age and the glaciers melting. In Mackinac Islands from past to present, it also states that this is right around the Great Lakes started to form. The dominant rock type on this island is limestone. There's beautiful limestone caves, some limestone stacks, and like I said, they were all formed during the last Ice Age when the Great Lakes were forming. The Great Lakes were like rising and lowering. Quote, I have a quote that says, "Researchers have discovered that between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago, there were different lake levels than the current ones today, and these previous lake levels were in fact higher than the current one. A 1941 study suggests that only the peak of the island was free from the water at one point." End quote. And we also do know that there is rock deposit around the lake that was found, and it's date back to 400 to 420 million years ago. And we know this because we found it while doing construction for the Mackinac Bridge. Arguably one of the most famous geological formations on this island is Arch Rock. It stands at 146 feet tall above the water and spans nearly 50 feet at its widest point. It's thought that the develop of this landmark started during the post-glacial period around 7,500 years ago. In Nature's Wondered article, it states that people have been visiting Arch Rock for many, many years. In this specific article, it said about a century and a half. The next notable one is Sugarloaf. Quote, "Sugarloaf is a dramatic breccia mass rising 75 feet above the ground and is the largest of Mackinac Island's many limestone stacks." End quote. And of course, you can't talk about Mackinac Island without talking about the beautiful forest that surrounds it. There's many trees on the island, some just including cedar, spruce, and balsam fir. Quote, "The soil layers support the island's forest is often very thin. In some places, the limestone bedrock is only a few inches below the surface. There's competition for water and nutrients in this forest. This causes many trees to grow slow and to die very fast before they reach full size. But these dead trees help by decaying and returning important elements into the soil." End quote. The history of the people that we have that were on the island dates back to 900 AD with the Native Americans that were present on the island. The name Mackinac comes from the native Ojibwa word, Mackinac, which translates to big turtle. The reason that it is named Big Turtle is that this island represents a turtle It has the shape of a turtle. And also, the native people also state that it is home to a great spirit and a turtle sacred figure in native culture. It represents Mother Earth and signifies good health and a long life. The first interaction of the European world that we have is in the mid 1600s. We can see that the first settlement of the Europeans was in the late 1600s when the French settled here. But they settled here but relocated 2 different times, but ended up in Mackinac City, not present day Mackinac City, in 1708. This is where they built fur trades, and were trading fur around this area. Many years later, after the French settled here, the British military seized this area and due to the 7-Year War, and then they ended up moving both the British troops and the fur trade back to Mackinac Island when the Revolutionary War started. They theorized that this would be a good battleground since the island was raised and had many limestone bluffs. The fort never ended up getting attacked during the Revolutionary War. And right after the Revolutionary War, they gave back the island and the fort back to the U.S. Up until the War of 1812, where the British took over the fort and just took hold of all the American soldiers that were there. They also built a second fort here called Fort George for vantage points and stockade. Of course, the Americans weren't happy, so they planned an attack in 1814, and this is the only battle that's ever happened on Mackinac Island. It was during the War of 1812. Of course, the Americans ended up winning that back, and it is now a national park. After the war, this island started to really boom with the fur trade and the fishing industry, but it really started to grow in tourism right after the Civil War, since the government was really heavy on building railroads across the country, so it made it easier access for people to come to the island. And then, like I said, it became a national park right after in 1875. It was actually only the second place to be named a national park right after Yellowstone about 3 years before. Of course, with the title, it came more tourism, and then with the tourism came the build of the Grand Hotel. It was built in 1887. It is the largest summer hotel in the world to this day. And also that Mackinac Island State Park takes up over 80% of the island, and the entirety of which was listed as a historical landmark in 1960. Today, the island is home to about 600 residents, with hundreds of thousands of people visiting each summer. Actually, in 2021, the record summer was the record summer with 600,000 people. And if you don't know, cars are banned from the island. The only way to get around is either on your feet, horse-drawn buggies, or bikes. And you have to get to the island by a ferry boat. Here's the fur trade, and here's just the tourism today. So this is a picture of my boyfriend and his friends. They went to Mackinac Island more recently than I did, and I did an interview with him. I just asked him a few questions. My first question I asked was, what was the impact or lasting memory did Mackinac have on you? And he responded, Mackinac Island leaves me with a memory of peacefulness, and when I think of being totally relaxed and calm, I think of sitting on the grass, on the hill, looking out on Lake Huron. My second question I asked him was, what originally attracted you to want to visit Mackinac Island. He responded, "The Upper Peninsula has always been a place that was special to me. I spent every summer visiting the Upper Peninsula, but I did not visit the island until later in high school, so I wanted to know what all the fuss was about. The fuss was 100% warranted," end quote. And then my final question was just more of like to include stuff that my past two questions didn't include. And he just said, if you're looking for peace on Earth, Mackinac Island's where it's at. Some of the environmental dangers that Mackinac Island faces is Line 5. Line 5 is a pipeline that travels under the Straits of Mackinac and carries oil and propane. Quote, overall, Line 5 transports up to 540,000 barrels of crude oil, light synthetic crude, and natural gases per day. And end quote. While inherently these pipes have not busted at all, they are very close to. In a Michigan League of Conservation Voters article, it states that the protective coating around the pipeline is very worn away, and Enbridge has constantly failed to properly anchor the pipeline to the lakebed, letting it sway uncontrollably in the strong Straits current. Obviously, if this pipeline were to bust, it would not just destroy, Mackinac Island or the nearby waters. It would destroy the whole Great Lakes and all around each state's bordering them. In the same article by the Michigan League of Conservation Voters, it states that Enbridge has constantly failed to demonstrate proper care for the pipeline, violating its agreement with the state of Michigan. There was also an independent study done that stated that there would be more jobs created than lost if we stopped this oil line. So there would be more jobs to take this line out and stop it than to start it. Overall, this Line 5 is dangerous to Mackinac Island and many of the surrounding areas